and we'll kick ourselves off. So, welcome everyone. We have 35 or just over 35 people registered, so people pop in and pop out, and that works for us. This is kind of a come as you are, so we are aware that people get Zoom fatigue. If you're comfortable and able to put your video cameras on, that's always helpful because it gives Kim feedback and lets us know what's going on. If you are done, be you're welcome to keep them off too. So this series we've been doing is the HR spills the tea. So the idea is to get a behind the scenes view. And we had somebody earlier who presented on LinkedIn behind the scenes. And Kim today is going to present on that first impression. And right now I'm lining somebody else to do a behind the scenes on resumes. And the whole idea is, for many of us, whether we're going through a job search process today, or whether it's something that, we just know is going to be part of the plan in the near future, there's a lot of mystery. Like sometimes it feels like Oz and you don't know what's happening behind the scenes and you're not getting the feedback and you kind of submit an application and then you're in that holding pattern and that limbo. And I think there's so much value in bringing in somebody like Kim to say, what are you thinking? What's happening? How can I make sure that I am doing my due diligence and I'm doing everything I can to be the strongest candidate possible? So today the topic is that first impressions. We're going to focus in on interviewing. But then when Kim and I were talking and kind of prepping what we could talk about, one of the things that we really, especially Kim, started going off on was that people start and those first few days of a job are really kind of weird. They are unstructured. You're kind of at starts and stops. You're here and there, and you have a lot of downtime. And how important it is during that phase, because you're still making that first impression. You've gotten the job, but there are people you're going to be working with. And so how are you showing up to that? Are you present? Are you engaging? What can you do? So Kim is a URI alum. So we love to have URI alum. She has worked in, and she can tell you much better than me, but she's worked in transportation, and she's worked in food service, and she's worked in healthcare, and she's worked in K through 12, all in these human resource roles. So a bunch of different industries in human resources. And now she just transitioned to becoming the HR director at Child and Family. So that's a social service agency in Middletown. And Kim, thank you. I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining. I appreciate you guys taking the time out on a nice summer evening to spend with me while I spill the tea on HR. So I am going to share my screen. Can you see it, Audra?
I can see it.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm just gonna jump right into it. So a little bit of background about me, because I think it's important just to give context of, how did I get here? Why should you listen to me? How do I know what I'm talking about? And as Audra said, I have kind of hopped around in my career, and those are intentional moves. So these are just post-college jobs. So out of college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I worked in marketing for a couple of years at American Power Conversion, and it wasn't a great fit for me. So I got pretty lucky. A recruiter called me and said, hey, do you want to explore an opportunity with Bank of America as a recruiting coordinator? So I made the move over there, and I instantly fell in love with HR. And from there, I kind of hopped around, taking on positions with increased responsibility. So I went to Ryder, which is a transportation company. I was promoted internally. From there, I went to Reinhart Food Service, which is a broadline food service distributor. And then I jumped into the public sector, which was a whirlwind. So I did public education for a couple of years in Fall River. I left and took an external promotion in Westerly, where I was their director of HR. And then I wanted to get back to what I call the real world, into the private sector. So I went to Charter Care Health Partners, and then just not even a month ago, just at the end of July, I moved over to Child and Family, as Audra said. So I'm the director of HR for Child and Family. We have a location in Middletown and a location in Providence, and you'll hear all about that at the end. But why I think this is important is because I have been on both sides of the table. Working in HR, obviously, I'm involved in the hiring process from the beginning to the end. I'm onboarding new hires. I am making sure they feel welcome and comfortable. And at the same time, you can see that I've, interviewed a few places myself, successfully, a few of them. So, I do have the experience on both sides and hoping to share some of that with you guys. So obviously, when you're out looking for a job, the first step is to apply for the jobs. And I underlined the S on jobs because you're probably not going to get the first job you apply for. That's just life. You're going to have to apply for a few to see a little traction. And I think about looking for jobs as a job. It's a lot of work. It's not, it's time consuming and it's not easy. It can be stressful. And I think especially starting out, if you're a newer grad, you don't have as much experience under your belt. You're likely not as confident in the skills that you have. And that's okay. And those are normal feelings that probably everybody is feeling. So I just put together a simple list of things that you should do and things that you should avoid, and I'll talk through them. And some of these might be common sense to you, and some of them are not common sense to everybody. So you might be laughing at some of the things on here, but you'd be amazed at what the people in HR see as the applications come through. So first and foremost is a professional email address. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten applications for like Ms. Sugar Mama Bear 516 at Hotmail. Like, you need a new email. They're free. You have to get a new email before you apply for jobs. You don't even have to use it, outside of the career world, but you definitely need a professional sounding email. Another best practice I always make sure to follow is uploading my resume in a PDF format. And this is probably just my OCD kicking in, but I want to make sure whatever I send over, nobody can inadvertently manipulate. I don't think someone's going to change my resume on purpose, but if somebody opens it up in Word, hits enter a couple times by accident, now they've made my resume kind of out of whack, and someone that looks at it like a hiring manager is going to think that I didn't take the time to make sure that everything was where it should be. So that's why I like to do the PDF format. Social media, which is huge in terms of applying for jobs. I feel like a lot of people, it's the unknown. What are we, are we looking at it? What are we looking for? Can we look at it? Can we use things against you guys? So I feel like the easiest way to eliminate any qualms about social media is just to make your accounts private. Unless you're an influencer, I don't really know why someone would not have a private account. There's a lot of creepy people in the world, and you don't want them looking at your personal business. So I'm not saying not to have it. I'm not saying, to post what you want or to try to limit what you're posting, but just make your account private. I feel like that's the easiest fix to something like that. Voicemail is another one. I know, not many people rely on voicemail nowadays. I'm not a huge fan of voicemail. However, when you're looking for a job, if someone chooses to contact you through the phone and they get to the point where they can leave you a message and your voicemail box is full, they're not going to leave a message because they can't. And they're going to have a bad taste in their mouth about you. Here you are looking for a job and you can't even bother to empty out your voicemail box. So make sure that if you are job hunting, your voicemail box is empty and able to receive messages. You want to think that about every interaction is an interview. Whether it's running into somebody in the grocery store and they're telling you about this opportunity, meeting somebody at a dinner out and they're telling you about an opportunity, every email, every phone call, every voicemail you leave, every text message you send while you're in the hiring process back and forth with hiring managers and recruiters, these are all, mini interviews. So make sure you treat every interaction as such. Even if it's a text message to the recruiter saying you're running 10 minutes late because of traffic, make sure your punctuation, capitalization, all of those things are the way that they should be, the way that we learned when we were in elementary school. And which brings me to my next one down, proper grammar. These are not your friends. Maybe one day they will be your friends, but right now they're not your friends. These are people that you need to take you seriously. So it's imperative to always use proper grammar. I cannot stress that enough. Unfortunately, the fact of the matter is, people are not going to take you seriously in life if you're not using proper grammar. It's huge. Like I said, I can't stress it enough. My next one, fill out all the questions. So I've actually had a candidate call me once and complain about our online application being too long. They wanted to know if they had to fill out all of the questions. I didn't even know what to say. I was honestly speechless. Of course you need to fill out all of the questions, even though the information you are filling out is likely already in the resume that you're uploading, and it's a super pain. It's necessary. That says something about you. If you're not going to fill out all, the questions that are being asked of you because you think it's answered on the resume, that kind of tells us that you're lazy, or you're entitled, or you're not serious about this, or that the rules don't apply to you. Sometimes it stinks, but you need to fill out all of the questions. That's important. I also don't like doing it, but we have to suck it up. We want the job. We got to do it. Salary expectation is something else that you should be prepared to answer on a job application. So sometimes there will be a range, a posted range on the job posting, but that's not always. Sometimes they will ask you what your expectations are. Again, not always. But make sure that you know what you're looking for. I like to put a range, or at least a bottom number, and also make sure that what you're looking for goes hand in hand with what the job entails and what skills you're bringing to the table. A lot of times the salary ranges are huge. It could be, $50,000 to $100,000, and there's a lot of wiggle room in there. That varies based on your experience, your education, your skills, your background, company size, what they're able to pay out. So make sure that you are filling out the salary expectation as a reasonable number for yourself and for the company. Another thing that I always do, not even when I'm looking for a job, I just kind of do it sporadically, I guess, when I'm thinking of it. But I guess if you're not that person, you could do it at job searches, you could set a calendar reminder, but I Google myself. I always Google myself because I want to know what's out there. And I want to know if a hiring manager or, a prospective employer is going to Google me, what are they going to see? Because you want to be prepared to talk through anything negative they might see. Maybe there are things that you can somehow get rid of on the internet. A lot of the social media accounts will have like a little clause. If you dig deep into the settings, basically, it's like a checkbox saying, like, I want to be able to have people find me in a public search, and you can check and uncheck that. I think the very first time I Googled myself, I could find like every account I ever made for any platform, and it was kind of horrific. So I went through, deleted a lot of accounts I didn't even use, and went through and changed a bunch of settings. And, now if you Google me, whatever is out there is stuff that I don't mind being out there. So a huge tool. If you have, I guess my name is a little more distinct, so there's really only one of me that I know about. But I guess if your name is John Smith, that might not be as big of an issue for you. But again, just something to keep in mind. And then have your references ready. At this point, applying for jobs, you might want to just give them a heads up and say, hey, I'm applying for jobs. I wanted to know if it's okay if I use you for a reference or put you down for a reference. Usually places of business are going to want 3 professional references. So coworkers, a lot of times we want to talk to former supervisors. So it's super important not to burn bridges as you're leaving jobs. And you have to think about it. Rhode Island, New England, the world is much smaller than we think about. People know people talk. And especially if you're in an industry, like a small industry that's more specific, education, for example, all the educators knew each other. Healthcare, I just worked in healthcare. All the nurses knew each other. So keep that in mind. You might not think that they know each other, but trust me, they know each other, or they know someone that knows someone. So just something else to keep in the back of your mind. And then on the flip side, and some of them we've talked through, like the inappropriate email address, the resumes being in a format that someone could edit, a public social media account versus private, a full voicemail inbox. Poor grammar, again, leaving blanks on applications instead of taking the time to fill everything out. And then two things that I didn't touch on things to avoid is underselling yourself. So I actually find that this is most common with newer grads and people that have less experience. You might think that you're applying for whatever, a marketing job, a job in human resources, but you've never worked in human resources, but you might have been working at Dunkin' Donuts for the past 10 years. And some people might think that, no, it doesn't apply, it's a different skill set, or that's, it's a high school job. That's important, especially when you don't have a ton of experience to fill your resume with at this point. That shows continuity. That shows that you were you were able to hold a job down for 10 years and maintain that. That's huge. So don't undersell yourself. Make sure that you're including those things. Maybe you didn't have a traditional job. Maybe you were busy volunteering, internships, paid, unpaid. You have to think about all your experiences and how those are going to help you in your position that you're applying for. Make sure to include those on the resumes. And then second languages too. This is crazy to me that people would not include that on a resume, but if you speak or read or you're fluent in another language, even if it's a language that you don't think is spoken around here, include that. That's a huge skill that people can't just go out and attain. I mean, there's things like Rosetta Stone, but you can't just go out and pick up Mandarin. That it doesn't work like that. So definitely make sure to include that. Some companies will even pay you more if you speak another language. So really important to do that. And then my last bullet on things to avoid, and I know this is probably one that sounds like common sense, but it's dishonesty. So maybe you might not think you're being dishonest. Maybe you're just embellishing a little. Don't. A lot of times if you are caught being dishonest on your job application or any time during work, once you've gotten the job, that's usually grounds for termination. There's usually zero tolerance for dishonesty. It's, a form of lying and cheating. It can be a form of stealing, depending on what you're being dishonest about. So just make sure, don't embellish, just be transparent and clear. It's not gonna help you out. It will always come out in the end, and you always have that hanging over your head. All right, so there's the Zoom cat, Audra. So step 2, presuming that you've been called. So I don't know. I feel like in today's world, you can be contacted in any way. You can be emailed, you can be phone called. I should say those are usually the 2 ways that a recruiter nowadays is going to reach out to you to set up an interview. Sometimes they'll want to do a phone screen. Sometimes they will just want to set up an interview with the hiring manager directly. With COVID, there's a lot of Zoom interviews going on. I had a couple of Zoom interviews as I started my new job at Child and Family. There's video interviews now, which are super awkward, but they're out there, and I don't think they're a bad thing, but just another way that companies are taking on interviews nowadays. So some things to keep in mind, and I feel like this is out there, but it's important, is to know the role and to know the company. Especially if you're applying for a lot of roles. When you're younger and you have less experience, you're probably more open to a lot of roles. You just want to get your foot in the door and you want to gain experience. There's not a ton of things that you love and a ton of things that you hate yet. You're green and you want to experience it all. So you've likely applied to more roles kind of blindly. Make sure that when you're talking to the recruiter, you know which role you're talking about and you know the specifics. Same thing with the company. You don't need stats. You don't need to know, the intricate details of the company, what they're trading for in the stock market. But you need to have a good understanding of the company. Know the industry that they're in, the markets that they serve. Those are important things to know. No one's expecting you to be an expert, but you should have some background information on the company once you're at the interview phase. So once you've nailed down the interview, be early. And I'm saying this as somebody who is late for everything. Make sure to be early. When I interview, I show up ungodly early. Maybe it's normal people early, but I'll be there at least a solid half an hour early. If I'm not there half an hour early, I feel like I'm late because I don't want anything to come up. I don't want to have to call and say I'm in traffic or I have a flat tire. I don't want to get lost. I don't want anything to happen that would prevent me from actually being on time. So, and I just mentioned getting lost. If you feel like you're going to get lost, maybe you're someone that gets lost easily. Those people are out there. That can be me. That's okay. I'm not judging you. Go the night before. I actually, when I went to Westerly, I went the night before, or I don't know, prior to my interview. I made the drive and I found where I was going. Really, I just wanted to test the beach traffic, but you know, those are important steps to make sure that you're going to be on time for your interview. Like the worst thing you can be is late, because now you're already starting off on a bad foot. They're going to have a negative taste in their mouth about you. So next I have invest in a suit. And I think this is a little bit me, but it's important. I say invest in a suit. I wear a suit to every single interview, even if it's in the summer. I have a summer suit. People that's your very first impression. And I understand sometimes people will think like, oh, this is a job, where I'm not going to have to dress like this. Well, I don't have to wear a suit every day either, but I wear a suit to my interviews. I think it's important, and it tells people that you're serious. It's one suit, get a black one. That way you can wear it over and over and over. I've had my suit from Banana Republic for as long as I can remember. It's the same one I always wear. You don't need a bunch of them. It's an investment. Think of it. That's why I have invest. It is an investment. And make sure you get a good one. It doesn't need to be Armani, but Forever 21 does not sell suits. So make sure you're getting something decent that will hold up over time. And then if you can't wear a suit, or you're just like, this is ridiculous, I'm not wearing a suit, dress appropriately. No jeans. I don't care what position you're applying for. I don't care if you're trying to sweep floors. No jeans ever. No sneakers. No flip-flops. People should see you out and about and know that you are going to work. So make sure that you're dressed appropriately. I can't stress that enough. Etiquette. I feel like this goes without saying, but you're going to go in, you want to make sure that you're shaking hands, you're making eye contact, you're not chewing gum, you don't have sunglasses in your hair. You just, this is an interview. Make sure that you are well mannered. I always bring a copy of my resume. I don't even know the last time someone actually needed the copy of my resume, but it's just one of those things that you're supposed to do. And it's easy, and God forbid I ever show up and someone asks me for a copy and I don't have it, you're going to look silly. So make sure to have copies with an S of your resume. If you can, find out in advance how many people that you're interviewing with so you can have enough copies. Places like public education love to have these massive panel interviews of like 20 people. So, I would say most of the time 5 is plenty, but you never know. So just know your audience. And then always have questions prepared. At the end of the interview, that's the classic, just like at the end of the presentation, does anybody have any questions? They'll say, do you have any questions? Always have questions prepared. And have questions that actually mean something to you versus questions that you're just asking to ask. So I think that will come with experience. The more questions you'll have, you will gain with jobs that you are, the industries and the jobs that you're in. So one question that I always ask is about culture, because that's something that's really important to me. When I was at Ryder, we had such a great culture where everybody was like a family. And that was something that kind of carried with me throughout my other jobs, especially having gone to other places that did not have such great culture. It's something that's important to me. So I always ask about it. And I think as you gain some experience, then you as well will have questions that are important to you, but just make sure that you always have something. It makes you look engaged and curious and interested in the position. You could write them down if you want, so you don't forget them. That's acceptable and fine. No one's going to think anything of you, think any less of you if you pull out a piece of paper. It's totally fine. And you should always practice. I know that sounds weird and it is very awkward. I'm not going to lie to you, but practicing is super important because it's so awkward. It's a conversation that you don't usually have on a day-to-day basis. Find a friend, record yourself. If you know someone that is a recruiter, a lot of times colleges will have different resources like you or I, where you can practice with somebody in the career center, or they set something up with employers. I'm not really sure what people are doing nowadays with COVID, but there are different options out there. So if you don't feel comfortable practicing with somebody else, then you can always record yourself and just practice with yourself. Respond to some prepared questions that you have, watch the playback of the video and see where you can improve on. I know I'm not great at all of the ums and the likes, but those are things that you should avoid. And I was just going to do an but yeah, try to pinpoint when you're saying and when you're saying like or things like that, and try to find other words, or maybe just take a pause and then start back up instead of using words like that. And the more that you practice your responses to questions, the easier they're going to be. It's kind of like telling a story. If you've told the same story 20 times, it just kind of flows. Whereas if it's the first time you're telling it, you're definitely gonna like your way through it, because it's not natural to you. So practice, practice, practice. It will make you more comfortable. I think two things that I don't hear people talk about enough are to be honest and to be confident. Or I'm sorry, to be yourself and to be confident. And yourself is, I think about it like this. Sometimes, people ask me, oh, how did that interview go? Like if I've interviewed somewhere, and I'll say, oh, I don't know if they really liked me. But you know what? I'm always myself in the interview. I think that's important, to be your authentic self. I use my hands a lot. I don't think anyone can see me right now because I'm sharing my screen. But that's how I talk. So I make sure that whoever I am in the interview is how I'm going to be at work. And if for some reason they don't think that's a good fit for them, or they don't like me, don't like that, like I'm not going to be a good fit there. I'm not going to be happy there, and that's fine. So just make sure to be yourself. Don't try to be fake. Don't try to look, be who you think the company is looking for. If that's not you, it's not you. And I think as time goes on, you guys will, go on interviews and you'll leave and think, I don't want that job, or I don't want to work there. The interview is actually a two-way street. It's not just them interviewing you, it's you interviewing them. So keep that in mind as well. And then the confidence thing, just be confident in what you're talking about. And I think that will come with time and experience as well. But we can see that it kind of radiates off of people. So, if you're comfortable and you're confident about what you're talking about, and your experience and your skills and what you can bring to the table, that will exude from you. And I have my Zoom best practices, which I'm kind of violating today. So one is to know your environment. So full disclosure, I had to move downstairs in my house. So at any moment, eventually there might be people and cats walking behind me. But typically, if this was an interview, you would want to be in an area where there's not going to be people and cats and things going on in the back of your environment. You're going to want to make sure that there's no background noise. And then you're going to want to get comfortable with the software beforehand. So Audra and I hopped on about 10 minutes early, made sure that I looked presentable. That's actually when we noticed that it was a little bit glitchy, and I came downstairs. So, test out the software. The first time you hop on Zoom or whatever you're on should not be to jump into the interview. You should have tested it out. There's actually like a Zoom test thing. I'm sure if you just Google Zoom test, where you can log on and literally just, play around with the functionality, just you. So that's out there. It's a resource. It's free. Take advantage of it. And then on the flip side, again, some of them kind of go hand in hand. So one, arriving late. I think that just, goes without saying. Poor appearance. So this could mean a lot. Poor appearance. So coming not dressed appropriately, which we talked about, jeans, flip-flops. If you're not groomed appropriately, maybe for men, if your facial hair is kind of crazy, if you're wearing something and it's wrinkly or dirty, you just want to make sure that, you look crisp for your interview. And then the next one I have is looking cute, which a lot of people can't, they struggle. At least I feel like when you're younger and you're just getting out of college, you struggle with professional versus cute. What might look cute or, professional going, I don't know, dinner with your friends, brunch, I'm not sure, might not be the same as how you want to dress going into an interview. So you want to kind of like tone it down a little. If you wear a lot of makeup, your makeup should look natural. If you wear a lot of ear or accessories, big jewelry, I like big earrings. You want to tone them down. Just get a nice little set of pearls. You can get them at Charlotte Russe. They don't have to be real. No one will know. Same thing. You want all your accessories to be minimal. Makeup minimal, hair minimal, nothing crazy, nothing that's going to be distracting as people are talking to you. I've definitely interviewed somebody once, and the fact that I can even remember, like, you shouldn't be remembering what people look like in interviews. This is going back to, when I was replacing myself at Ryder, and the candidate came in and she had this hot pink lipstick on, and I couldn't stop looking at her lips the whole time. And it was distracting me. I couldn't even focus on what she was saying. She might have been the best candidate, but I couldn't focus on anything but her hot pink lipstick. I also used to work with someone who would wear like this white sparkly eyeshadow, which was also distracting. So just be mindful of things like that. You might look really cute, but you're not trying to look cute at the interview. So, and then the next thing, excessive anything, I guess that just goes to what I said, the jewelry, the makeup, the hair, perfume or cologne. If you wear that, I mean, one spray, that's all you need at most. Don't get carried away. Other things to avoid: appearing unprepared. Again, I think this goes without saying. So again, that goes to the resume, that goes to the company research. Knowing where you're going, knowing who you're meeting with, that's huge. You should know exactly who you're meeting with. Have their name, write it down if you need to. Print out the email that they sent it to you on. You want to know where you're going, who you're meeting with, their position. Nothing is worse than showing up and just saying, I have an interview at a company of 5,000 people, and they say, with who? And you say, you need to know who you're interviewing with. That's important. Another thing to try to avoid doing is fidgeting. And I know, like, that's some habit that all of us, it's like the ums. I think people do it when they're uncomfortable, but if that's you, just try to rein it in. Do your best. Be cognizant of it and rein it in. Other things to avoid in the interview: asking how much you will get paid. So this is different than them asking you for your salary expectations, or you even asking what the range is. What you don't want to do is say, how much are you going to pay me, or something along those lines. You haven't even gotten the job at this point. So there's the conversation. It's too early in the conversation. It is appropriate to ask what the range of pay is, but not how much you specifically will get paid. Not at this point. Other things to avoid is oversharing. You don't need to disclose anything about health, medical, any protected class information. And sometimes people just think they're being personal, or personable, I should say, and they'll talk about their families, or they'll just get into, too long of a story. No oversharing. And you can kind of gauge your audience as well, but, just make sure that you're sticking to the questions that they're asking you. If they ask you something, try to be succinct in your answer and not, kind of give them a novel. They're going to get lost in the answer. So that's another skill to kind of hone in on, is succinct, crisp answers. And then the last thing to avoid in terms of Zoom is, well, I actually just talked about this, external disruptions, like people walking in, cats, dogs, babies, lawnmowers. If it's a nice day and you're taking a Zoom from, your house and your windows are open, make sure to try to avoid all of that. And then end user issues. You don't know what you're doing on the software. You're accidentally muting yourself. You don't know how to share your screen. You're glitchy. Your battery dies. All of the above. Just trying to make sure that you've already carved out ways to avoid all of that beforehand. As I struggle to get to my next slide here. There we go. So now what? After the interview, so best practices, and this is huge for me, and we kind of already touched on it, is to consider fit and culture. You just met with people. Hopefully, you've talked, by this point, you've probably talked to a recruiter and a hiring manager. Maybe, not necessarily always, but that would be pretty standard, as the recruiter and the hiring manager. They've likely told you about the position. They've likely told you about the company. They've likely answered your questions. Now it's time for you to decide, like, is this a good fit for me? Is this a good place? Is this somewhere I would want to work, where I think I could thrive and I think I would be happy? The answer is not always going to be yes. So definitely, start start to think about that. That's important. You don't want to accept a job at a place that you are going to be miserable. I'll give you guys an example. So it probably isn't evident, but I feel like I'm pretty techie. And I'm electronic everything. I don't use paper. I need like one pen and a laptop and I'm good to go. I don't need Post-its. I don't need a notepad. I need none of that. And one time I ended up at a company and I had a desktop computer, and it was expected that when I went to meetings, I should take notes by hand, which sounds maybe petty to somebody, but for someone like me who like never uses paper, that was a big deal. And culturally, technologically, there was no tech integration. It was super old school. Everything was slow, like not just like slow at your house. It was like slow. I couldn't believe a company was operating this slow, to the point that, you know, people couldn't get their work done. It was crazy. So again, that wasn't a good fit culturally in terms of technology for me. Something I had never even thought to ask about in an interview, honestly, like their tech culture. But you learn as you go. And this is what I said. You get some experience, and then those experiences kind of formulate the questions that you're going to have during future interviews for future employers. So definitely something to think about. If I'm interested in the job, I always send a thank you email. I try to do it within 24 hours. I don't need to do it from the parking lot. And the thank you email for me is where I not only thank them for, you know, their time and the consideration, but I also reiterate my interest. I want them to know I heard you and I really want to come here. I'm interested in being a part of this team, or, you know, this sounded exciting to me, or, you know, whatever they talk to you about. If there was something that really struck you as something you wanted to be a part of, or that you think that you would be able to contribute to, add that in. The note should also be succinct. This is not a story. They're likely not going to respond to you. That's normal. That's okay. Like, don't expect them to respond. By them responding, it starts a back and forth. And if things don't go the right way, it could just end badly. So don't expect them to respond. I would be shocked if someone did respond to your thank you. And you don't need to send a card. I've gotten a card in the mail before. It was very sweet, but you know, an email is fine. It's 2021. Email is totally fine. I think the most important bullet point on this slide is to be patient. As someone that works in HR, I never try to give timelines, or if someone asks me like, oh, what's the timeline during the hiring process, I'll say, you know, obviously I want to fill it as soon as possible. However, I can't promise you any dates, because I feel like, at least in my experience, when I say, oh, I'll get back to you next week, well, next week turns into 2 weeks. So I don't want to overpromise to anybody. So just be patient. Just know that behind the scenes, trust me, there is nobody sitting around not trying to hire and fill the positions. You know, if the position is posted, it's because there is a need. The hiring managers are chomping at the bit. They're probably in touch with the recruiters every day. Like, do we have any new candidates? Where are we with this person? Have you talked to so-and-so? That's my daily life. So trust me, no one's just sitting around like twiddling their thumbs. Just be patient. Let the process, you know, kind of unfold as it should. And then if someone has given you a timeline, I would say it's safe to follow up, you know, maybe a couple days after. You know, if they say, oh, you'll hear from me by Friday, and then Tuesday rolls around, I would, or even Monday, but, you know, I would say let Friday pass, and then reach out and say, you know, hey, I was just expecting to hear from you on Friday. Just wanted to follow up. Just wanted to reiterate my interest. Make sure you're putting a positive spin on it, and it's not like, hey, no one called me. You wanna spin it in a positive light. Hey, I was just following up. I'm really excited about this opportunity. Just wanted to make sure, you know, there's nothing you need from me, or something along those lines. So that's huge. Be patient. Confirm. Oh, this is at the point where you should be confirming with your references. So a lot of times during the interview, not, I would say half and half. They'll say, okay, next steps, we're going to contact your references, blah, 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 we'll be in touch. Sometimes they don't say that, but if they do, you want to make sure that your references are put on notice. So you already should have reached out to them and said, hey, I'm going to be applying for jobs. Can I use you as a reference? And they say yes. Well, now it's to the point where they might actually get called. So you want to circle back. Hey, I just wanted to let you know, I interviewed at Child and Family for a director of HR position. Please expect a call from so-and-so. So make sure that you're following up. They should be aware of who's going to call, what position it's for. Any information you can give them is helpful. This is a position where they're looking for someone to roll out a new HRIS system. That's a super HR thing, like a new technological system, and do tech integration. And that's something that you're great at. You're going to want your references to talk about those experiences that they had with you. Oh, I worked with, John at such and such company, and he rolled out this wonderful system and saved people all this time and money and brought all these efficiencies into the workplace. Those are the things that your references should be talking about. So there is a conversation that has to happen between you and your references. It's not just, hey, can I use you for a reference? Okay, thanks. Make sure that you're having a conversation with them as well. Salary negotiation. So at this point, you've gotten a call back. They've said they want to offer you the job. The salary is XYZ. I like to think on things, because salary is just one piece of total compensation, which is my next bullet. So again, salary is the driver. That's the big number. That's what we all look for, especially as you're younger. I'm not going to lie. Like that's all I hear. But there's so much more that you need to be thinking about. Benefits, whether it's health, dental, life, FSA, HSA, HRA, pet insurance, gym memberships. There are so many more things I can't think of right now. 401k, that's huge. Retirement, stock options, depending on the type of company that you're going to be working for, flex hours, remote work. There's so many things that go into total compensation. So I never say yes right away. I ask for 24 hours, and I ask if they can, provide me with benefit, the total compensation package. Most places will. And I mean that they will without you asking is what I'm saying. Because they know that those are all factors in your decision. I was actually in an interview once, and I was considering leaving my job. It would have been a lateral move. The commute would have been a smidge shorter. And they offered me, I don't know, I think it was like 10 or 15,000 more dollars than I was making. But then when I asked them for the total compensation, they gave it to me. Well, where I was getting a huge, they were paying a huge piece into my retirement. The company was contributing a large sum into my retirement. And at the new company, the new offer, it was pennies compared to what I was already getting. So it wasn't worth it to me. I actually, I said, thanks, but no thanks. They called me back, which blew me away and countered me. But still, like that retirement, like that was huge to me, and it made a big difference. So, just make sure that you're taking all things into consideration when you are accepting offers. In terms of negotiation, I'm not gonna lie. If you guys are right out of college, don't have a ton of real life experience or real work experience yet, you don't have a lot of wiggle room. The salaries typically are what they are. You guys are all coming out with the same college experience. So just keep that in mind. Once you're older and I shouldn't say older, once you have more experience and you have some different skills that you can bring to the table, here's where I did this, here's where I affected change here, and you can talk about those experiences. Those are the things you can use to leverage a higher paying salary. So nothing is wrong with countering and negotiating with them, but just make sure that you have all the right tools in place to make those, not arguments, but to have those conversations, not just, I want $10 more an hour because, that's what the position pays, or so-and-so makes that money, or this, company pays that, or that's what Glassdoor told me. Make sure that you actually have a foot to stand on if you're going to engage in those conversations. And then the last bullet on the best practices side is networking. Again, Rhode Island is small, New England is small, the world is small, smaller than we think and smaller than we realize. You never know where these people are going to end up. You never know. I interviewed once with somebody and they didn't pick me. Actually, this is pretty recent. So in the spring, I interviewed at a different company. Same deal. It was with the CEO for a human services organization, made it all the way to the finals. And they didn't pick me, and that's fine. And then just like maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, he reached back out to me and he said, I know it's been a long time. I just wanted to let you know what had happened. We promoted someone internally. We've created this new position. I was really impressed by you during the interview. I was wondering if you're interested. Never has happened to me. Blew me away. But obviously I'm here at Child and Family now, so I politely declined. But this is what I'm talking about with networking. Like every interaction is an interview. Although my interaction was an interview with him, but you just never know. Make sure you're always polite. Make sure you're always professional. Make sure you're always leaving a good impression, because you don't know where those interactions are going to lead. You don't know who knows who. You don't know. Some people make job switches. You run into the same people over and over once you're in the working world. It's crazy. So definitely, make sure to think of these as networking situations as well.
Kim,
A lot of times, yes.
we are at 6:45. I have a list of questions.
Oh, okay.
Would it be okay if we open it up to everyone? Because
Yeah,
as
of
you've
course.
spoken, I'm like, I have questions about salary and career changing. And so if I
Yes.
can, I would like to be able to say, hey, all of you who are here, your questions come first.
Totally
However
fine.
you want to do them. We have a variety of people on the call. So for people who are really doing this first transition out of college, but then people who might be on the opposite end going, I want one more transition. I'm at the end of my career, and then everyone in between.
Yeah.
Kim has covered a lot of area. So you can type your questions, you can unmute yourself, raise your hand. We're really informal, so whatever works for you. One of the things while people are thinking that I wanted to ask, so I want to go back to that salary
Oh, I knew it was
expectation
coming.
because because this is one of the questions that I get asked a lot, and nobody likes it. Like, I think a lot of us are going, hey, can you just tell me what the range is? And you never want to, like you said, undersell yourself, but you don't want to talk yourself out of a position. How do I answer that?
Oh, it's hard. A good recruiter will ask candidates, their very first interaction, because honestly, you're wasting your own time. If you are a recruiter and you are, the job pays $50,000 and you're talking to someone unbeknownst to you that's looking for $75,000, and then you get them all the way to the end and they're like, I literally can't live on that. Like it's a non-negotiable. Like I wouldn't be able to do that. Well, you've just wasted your time, their time, and your whole hiring team's time. Not everyone is a good recruiter, to be quite honest. We're not all the best that we can be all the time. It is what it is. So I would say that if you're in a situation where you are not sure what the range is, I think it's appropriate to say, these are my expectations. Does this fall within your range? I don't think that's inappropriate at all. I like to give the gap of numbers, or lately I feel like I just give the bottom number. Because really, is there a top number? Someone actually asked me once, so like, do you have a top number? I'm like, no, of course not. A gazillion dollars.
Keep going.
Hire me. Yeah, a gazillion dollars. Hire me. Thank you.
Molly has a great question related to this too.
All
Are
right.
organizations allowed to ask you about your salary history?
Varies by state. Oh gosh, I have to pull out my HR brain. I'm trying to remember what it is here in Rhode Island. I think they can. Don't quote me on that. Oh my gosh. But it does vary by state. So there are different laws in different states that where you can ask a ton of, like in Massachusetts, they can't ask you if you are a convicted felon until you have accepted or been offered a position. So that can't be on their application. So same thing in terms of salary. It does vary by state. I'm not 100% sure if they can ask you in Rhode Island. I like to not ask things like that personally. It just kind of opens up the company for like wage discrimination issues. So it's a red flag in general. If I see that on an application that they haven't picked up, they should not be asking people that.
Yeah, and that's always sticky. And thank you. Anne weighed in on Massachusetts, and it's a no for Mass.
Oh, thank you.
But it is uncomfortable. And, to what you had said before about, hey, they're protected classes, and there's the federal ones, but then those vary state by state. And what do I share? What do I not share?
Exactly.
So one of my other questions is about career changing, because this is another one I get asked a lot, which is I'm looking for a job. I know I can do it. I have tons of transferable skills, but my experience is in a different area. How do I communicate that to you? How do I like not be a risk and be somebody you want to invest in?
You kind of said the keywords, and it's transferable skills. So you really need to be able to talk through those. And to be quite honest, there are people out there that are just set in their ways, and they feel like unless they have experience in XYZ, they don't want them. But to me, I look at that as if I'm going to end up at a place where they're so rigid and they're not, they don't have an open mind about, if someone's intelligent and has skills, we can teach them and we can mold them and they can learn. I don't know if that's a good fit for me personally. So I look at it like that. But I think it is really important to be able to talk through the transferable skills. I mean, I did my own career change when I went from marketing to human resources. Obviously, nothing in common that I can think of. But, one thing that I think every industry has in common is people. So people skills are huge. Being able to communicate, that's a big one. I know that, people throw the communication word around a lot, and it can mean so many different things. But if you're able to communicate concisely with people, influence people, influencing is another thing that can kind of, go throughout every industry. Those are skills that you can kind of talk through. If you're techie and you have tech skills, again, something that, is involved in every industry and every profession. So if that's something that you have to offer, that's something that you can also talk up.
So I will tell you all, I will keep peppering Kim with questions because I get asked them all the time. So once again, interrupt me, raise your hand. Something that I get asked, especially with interviewing, is like, all right, I had an interview, but oh, here's all these things I really should have said. I forgot to tell them about this, or there was a specific experience that was relevant when I answered that question, or I answered this in kind of a way and it didn't seem to go over well. Like I saw the faces and I kind of want to correct it. So essentially, I said something I want to correct or I want to add something, but now my interview's over. Do I get a second chance at this? Like how do I follow up in that situation?
That is a good question. I feel like if it's something you want to add to the story or amend the story, I mean, I think like once it's done, it's kind of done. I would say the best time if you're going to have the opportunity to address them is in that thank you email. But again, it needs to be succinct. It shouldn't be kind of you rehashing the story and telling another version. It should be very crisp. I'm just trying to think of an example. Like I have gotten feedback on myself, honestly, during an interview. What did I refer to somebody as? Like know-it-alls. I can't remember what the question was, but I referred to like working with know-it-alls because there's a know-it-all everywhere. Like that's just a fact. Well, apparently there was a know-it-all in the interview, and I offended whoever the know-it-all was. I don't know who it is. I work with this person apparently, but that was the feedback that was given to me after. Is like, oh, like because they were offended by it, and just be careful, blah blah blah. So I didn't have the opportunity to respond to that feedback because it was after, and it was nothing I even knew that I did. So, I mean, it's kind of taking the question in another direction. But I would say, if you're going to kind of correct or amend something, the thank you email would be the most appropriate time to do it. Or if you get them on the phone, maybe they're calling you to bring you in for a second interview. The second interview would be a good time. If you're interviewing with different people, maybe as you're talking to the recruiter to schedule the second interview, you can kind of just bring it up. Hey, just so I answered a question this way and they all kind of made faces at me. I just want to make it clear that this was my intent in my answer, or, kind of throw it in that way.
All right, I'm going to throw another one at you. If I need an accommodation, and whether that is that, I have a script for medicinal marijuana, but I know that the company drug tests, or that I need some physical accommodation in my job, or there's something with mental health, like any sort of accommodation, when do I have that conversation? When is that like appropriate? And especially if it makes me nervous to even start the process.
Yeah, God, you actually have really good questions. Um, you want to, as uncomfortable and hard and risky and scary as it is, you want to be upfront about those things. So I would say during the interview, it's an appropriate time to get it out there. This is already when you've reeled them in. You're in the interview. You're already kind of answering their questions, and they're getting to know you and learn about you and your personality and your skill set. So that's a great time to kind of just talk about those things if it's appropriate. In terms of accommodations, I mean, if it's a medical, I'll back up. If it's a medical accommodation, I wouldn't talk about it during the interview. I would talk about it during the offer phase. But if it's an accommodation, I forgot the other ones you listed, but like the like a physical thing, like they need a Veridesk or something like that. I don't know, something like a smaller accommodation where it's not quite medical. Maybe they need a Veridesk. Maybe they need where did I work? I had to get special headphones for someone before so that they could hear better on calls. I also had to get like a microphone device that someone wore around their neck so that their voice projected out in a classroom. Where it wasn't really a medical accommodation, I would say those are safe to chat about in interviews. But if it's medical related, I would wait till the offer phase. But if it's more of like you need special equipment or something like that, then I would say it's okay to chat about in the interview.
Right. I'm going to take Jen's question, and then I have time for one more. So Jen's question is, what is the number one red flag that would stop you from moving forward with someone? What would make someone stand out that otherwise you may not have moved forward with? So what stops it, and what makes you change your mind?
I feel like I'm the unprepared one. I wasn't prepared for these questions. Number one red flag. I guess just like an overall lack of professionalism. I'm trying to think of like someone that I hired where I'm like, no, like that's never gonna happen. I mean, usually when there's a lack of professionalism, it's throughout everything. It's not like they just came in with a wrinkled shirt or they just came in late. It's usually a package of unprofessionalism. For me, like I'm all about the details. Maybe I read into them too much, but those little details tell me that you pay attention to the details, that you care, that you're worried about the smaller things, and that you have that those are things that you're thinking about and that you're mindful about and that you're not overlooking things. So I think an overall lack of professionalism, whether it's appearance, tardiness, not being prepared for the interview, showing up late, that would be a huge red flag for me. If you can't pull it together for an interview, like how are you going to present at work? Like what? Like that's like this is your one opportunity to show yourself and to sell yourself and show your best self. And then what would make someone stand out that I would not otherwise have moved forward with? I'm really big about attitude and just having like the right attitude. There's a lot of smart, capable people out there that I've come across, but they don't have a good attitude. And then there are people that might not be as skilled yet, but they have a great attitude. So I think that's huge. And you can kind of see that. And people will, if someone's self-motivated and they're a go-getter and, they're eager to learn and they want to learn, and these are kind of things that they're coming to me with, those are qualities that stand out for me. So somebody on paper that might not have all the skills I'm looking for. Maybe they've never, in terms of FMLA, it's really, or in terms of HR, that's all I can think of. But, you know, maybe they haven't done FMLA, maybe they haven't recruited, or they don't know much about payroll. But they have a great attitude and they're willing to learn and they know these things exist, but, you know, they just haven't had to, you know, work with them day in and day out. Those are things that stand out to me as qualities that I would want that person to work with me on my team.
All right, Kim, I'm going to ask you my last question. We'll then say goodbye and close out.
All right.
You represent a field that a lot of people are interested in. And I've met, once again, that career transition. A lot of people who are going from, they might have a lot of management experience from any different industry, and they're going, okay, where can I go next? Gosh, I've invested in people. So if somebody was looking to transition into human resources, what would you recommend that they do? Is there they should follow or experiences they should specifically build?
I feel like the easiest way into HR is through recruiting. That's probably not the answer you expected, but I feel like recruiting, in terms of like all the facets of HR, it has the transferable skills that you're talking about. Recruiters are salespeople of the company and of the positions, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but, you know, if you've ever talked to a really good recruiter, you'll know the difference between when I say the good recruiter and the not so good recruiter. Once you talk to one, you'll be like, oh, this is completely different. They have sold me the opportunity that I have now. They found me on LinkedIn. I didn't apply. The job wasn't posted. She called me. We had a conversation. She reeled me in. She recruited me. So a lot of people have those skills because they're basically just people skills. So I feel like, you know, some of the other skills in HR, compliance, legal, you know, a lot of the medical stuff, people aren't as familiar with. So, you know, if you hire into those, you typically want someone that has a little bit of knowledge, so that they're not just kind of blindly, inadvertently breaking the law. But with recruiting, you know, it's really a lot of people skills. Not that there's not compliance stuff too, but, you know, people skills that where if you have worked at, you know, the mall, you've done retail, you have people skills. You've worked in a restaurant, you have people skills. You have, you know, sold cars, you worked in a hotel. All of these different careers are people skills that you can use to work your way into HR. And once you're in, you're in. You know, that's how I ended up in HR. I started in recruiting. I worked my way over to the generalist side and then clawed my way to the top. But I think that's the best way, and it gives you a smaller area to learn before you kind of branch out into other areas. So within HR, there are so many different ways that you can go, and I think recruiting is just kind of a more natural skill set. So definitely, and it's fun. You get to talk to people. You're the nice person in HR. You're the one that's hiring people and changing their lives and giving them jobs. Once you get to other positions, you're the one taking things away and terminating them and crushing their dreams. So recruiting it can be the happy side of HR.
Thank you, Kim. So we will wrap up here. One of the things that I'm a huge proponent of is the value of time. And so Kim has taken time into her evening, but also time to prepare this presentation, and really appreciate that. Really appreciate everyone taking time out of their evening and joining us today. Once again, your time is valuable, and I know we've moved Kim spent all this time preparing and we kind of cut through quick.
No, that's fine. I'll send you my slides.
She'll send us the slides and I'll send them out to everyone. So we will end here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Kim, and have a good night.
Bye. Thank you.